We're going to start our series today with the first self-adhesive stamp put out by the United States Postal Service. This is Scott number 1552, and it came out in November of 1974. You can see here I have a couple of mint stamps here. I actually bought this online when I was looking for something else. I think I paid like 40-50 cents for it, and when I got it and I was prepping for this episode, a second 4 fell off the bottom of this one, so I got 8 for less than face value, which I thought was pretty cool. The stamp came out for Christmas, and you can see it says Peace on Earth, Christmas, pre-canceled, 10 cents. And the depiction on here, it's a dove of peace, but it's also the weather vane from the top of Mount Vernon, which was the home of George Washington. Now, this isn't the first time this weather vane's been on a stamp. There's a couple different depictions of Mount Vernon. There's a set of 6 of these cut squares or postal stationery in 6 different colors. But if you see them close up here on top of the cupola or the tower there, you can't really make out the weather vane. I think it's a little bit higher than that. There was a stamp that came out in 1936 by Jim Farley and FDR, part of a 5 stamp set of various different famous generals and whatnot from the Army, and there was also 5 from the Navy. But the 1 cent stamp, and I just got one of these on cover a couple of months ago, actually. There's 2 of them on there, a bunch of other stamps. And if you zoom in on the stamp, you can see the weather vane clearly up on the top of the tower there. It's like a little globe and then a staff. And it was also on another stamp that came out about 20 years after this. It's part of the Liberty series. And I showed you guys this cover in my first episode when we were talking about slogan cancels. This one has a Pray for Peace. It's from the American Topical Association back in 1961. And it had 2 really nice copies of this 1.5 cent stamp. But you can see here just the detail they used to put on these old stamps, which kind of is lacking in a lot of these self-adhesives, and it's part of the reason why some people hate them. But you can definitely see it's kind of a reverse of this. You can see the beak on the left and the tail on the right, and one of these wings coming up. You can almost see the crisscross bars that are on the body and the wings of the bird. You can also see the weather vane in the Nicolas Cage movie National Treasure 2, The Book of Secrets, when he goes to visit the president at he goes to kidnap the president at Mount Vernon. They go in like in the caves underneath and stuff. Secret agents are like, "Where's my sledgehammers?" When he's talking to the president and showing him the map that George Washington made of, or the architectural plans for Mount Vernon, you can see that weather vane in the background. So I thought that was kind of cool. The USPS put a bunch of countermeasures on this thing to stop people from reusing them because they were concerned about the self-adhesiveness. People just peeling these off and using them it used a rubber-based adhesive. You can really see how it caused a lot of spots or just overall discoloring of the stamp. Just look how brown that one is. The more exposed the elements these are, the more discolored they're going to get. I do have a couple in here that are off paper. And this one, it looks like they took it off paper pretty early on because I think this is pretty close to the original colors. It's supposed to be white and not like this tan color that most of them are. One of the countermeasures is they put on layers of paper with the idea that if you try to soak it, it would kind of just dissolve or come into pieces. Put some tears into this thing. They cut, you can probably see it from the back a little bit better. They cut into the stamp and through the paper so that when you tried to pull it off the page, it would tear the stamp into pieces. Something similar to what England's doing right now with their stamps, about how they are putting those little ovals in the stamp so that if you try to pull it off, it's going to come off in like 3 pieces. So as we go through these, I'm going to be selecting one of these to go into my album. I mean, right now the clear winner is going to be the one that's already off paper because I don't have to worry about anything. It's also the cleanest copy in terms of the color. So I'm just going to place that stamp here. These are not supposed to be tagged. I just kind of want to see what these look like under a UV light. All right, so you can see that the Washington stamp. Yeah, the Washington stamp's lighting up. And some of the paper is kind of reacting to the UV, but the other stamps are not. So these are not tagged. Now the other stamps we'll be talking about, most of them should be tagged, we'll kind of just go over there issue by issue, just kind of look for some varieties. So another thing I'm going to be doing with these is I'm going to be running them over a light because I'm looking for like damaged stamps, and I'm looking for place stamp here's underneath the paper here. And this is what I do when I go through mixtures of stamps. And I might save a couple that have slogan cancels on them, but the rest of these are just kind of going to go in my extra stamps on paper pile. So like here's one that says place stamp here underneath. So I've definitely got to soak that one off paper. When we're going through these stamps, I'm hoping to kind of highlight the artists that were involved with the production. And there was two people who are credited with designing this stamp. One's name is Don Hayden, and the only other stamp I could see that he worked on was the Scott number 1911. It's 1981 18-cent savings and loan stamp. And then the other guy, his name was Robert Geisman, and he's done a bunch of portraits of like LaGuardia, Dwight Eisenhower, and he did the 3-cent Religious Freedom in America stamp. So we're just gonna take our first stamp that we're putting into the album today. This guy right here. All right. And there is the first self-adhesive stamp. And first page done in my album. So our next stamp is going to be the second self-adhesive stamp. This one came out in 1989. This is Scott number 2431. This is an eagle and shield design by J. Hayden. I only have 3 copies, and one's a mint stamp. It's still on the original lining. So a lot of these stamps, they came on a strip of 18. It kind of looked like this, where there was a gap in between the stamps on either side. And these were for first day cover machines. There'd be like a strip of 18 stamps, and you just feed it into the machine, and I don't know how it works exactly, but it would put the stamps onto the paper for you, so you didn't have to sit there and lick a bunch of stamps, or in this case, stick them on there. But it also came in booklets of 18. And the booklets of 18, which was $4.50 in postage, cost $5. There was a 50-cent surcharge to kind of cover cost of the extra measures they took to make this stamp. The one in 1974 was deemed a failure, not just because it was unpopular, but it was really expensive to produce. In this case, they used an acrylic adhesive instead of a rubber-based adhesive. And this stamp is tagged, so we're going to take a look at that here in a second. I'm probably just going to go with this guy right here for my album, just because he does have a little bit of a cancel mark on the bottom left. But otherwise, he's in pretty good shape. And you can see these glow pretty green. The middle one seems to glow better than the other ones do. But and the tagging is mostly done for the automated cancellation machines to figure out where the stamp is at, but it's also an anti-counterfeiting measure. All right, we're doing the second self-adhesive stamp. This guy right here. The next stamp is going to be, came out the next year. This was exclusively in Seattle. I only have one single copy of this stamp. So it's a 25-cent flag stamp. And this actually came out from ATM machines. Now, the Postmaster General from 1988 to 1992, his name was Anthony Frank, and he came from the banking industry. And when they were having a powwow, I guess, talking about what kind of innovations they can do for stamps, somebody said, why don't we dispense stamps out of bank machines? And they thought that was a pretty good idea. So they put that into production. They got the engineering team on it, and the stamp designers. The stamps came out on these sheets that looked like this. And basically, they were the same size and shape as a dollar bill, like almost exactly, because they didn't want to have to retool the bank machines to spit these things out. And this is actually a size you see in a lot of stamps that are ATM stamps. Like these Justice and Liberty ones from like 2012. These are the same size as the dollar bill. So a majority of the stamps we're actually going to be talking about today, at least 18 of them, are ATM stamps, because that's kind of the first purpose that they used for self-adhesive stamps in the early days of the program. And this is really popular. People could go, if you needed stamps in the middle of the night, you could just go to a cash machine. The stamps aren't on paper. They're on a polyester plastic fiber. And if you ever peeled the label off of a Coke bottle, this is what that feels like. It's just kind of just a little thin piece of plastic. And these, I believe, are not tagged. You can see it 29-cent glowing green, but this 25-cent stamp's not, because it is untagged. So when they were developing this stamp, the post office went to the 1989 World Stamp Expo. They brought a cash machine in, some specimens of the stamp, just to kind of show people how these were pulled out. And that was pretty popular. There was some backlash with this stamp and the next one because they are plastic. So when you put them on an envelope, you make it so you can't recycle that paper envelope. The paper recyclers got really mad because it was messing up their machines. All right, stamp number 3. Let's go right here. Which leads us to the second, or the 4th stamp, but this is the second ATM stamp. And these are very similar to that last one. These it's the same design. Actually have 3 or 4 of these. Yeah, so in 1991, the stamp, the first class rate went up from 25 cents to 29 cents. And if you're not familiar with these non-denominational stamps, after the USPS was formed, whenever they did a rate change after first couple, they would put out a stamp, like an A rate stamp or a B rate. Because there's this thing called the Postal Rate Commission, and now it's called the Postal Regulatory Commission, who decide what the postal rate's going to be. So the post office has to go to the PRC and say, hey, our expenses have gone up, inflation's up, we need to increase the postage rates. And it might take 6 months or a year for the PRC to decide by how much. I mean, they can recommend like we need 3-cent increase on first class or whatever, but it's up to the PRC. They're going to raise the rate by 1 or 5 cents. And so they just take a long time doing studies. The post office wants to make stamps that will cover that rate when it comes out. So they'll do temporary rate stamps. But they put the F stamps out because they don't know what the postage rate's going to be at first. So they change the rate to the F rate. And then after that, they put out 29-cent stamps. And they also put out a makeup stamp. It's not a self-adhesive, but I do have an example here. So I got this cover from a girlfriend of mine in high school. She was from the Bay Area in California. We actually met in Moscow in the Soviet Union. She was there part of like a youth science group, and I was there as a student ambassador, and we met in the hotel there. We started dating, and then she went home to California. And you can see here, this is after the rate went from 25 cents to 29 cents. There's a 25-cent stamp here. It's actually got a dolphin slogan cancel on the dolphin stamp, something I like to look out for. But it has the F rate makeup stamp. Now, when they made the F rates, because they didn't know the rate was going to go up to 29 cents, they just knew it was going to go up. They also made these makeup stamps with the idea that someone could put a 25-cent stamp with the makeup rate stamp to make up to the F rate of postage, which is 29 cents. So they made the makeup rate stamps for F, G, and H. Then they stopped using letters after H. Or place stamp here's. It's a little labor intensive, but it's for what I like to do. So we're going to check the tagging on here. So you can see here, they all pretty much look the same, although some of the torches seem to be glowing a different color. Those could be the 1992 varieties. So I'm actually going to set those two aside. I don't know if you can see those or not, but there's definitely a difference in how the flame reacts to the UV light on those two stamps on the right there. I think they reprinted these in 1992. And then I am going to take a couple to see if I can soak these off of paper, because this is the 5th stamp that came out, and the first 5 stamps in the Scott's catalog have that little do not soak symbol next to them. The next 15 or so stamps don't have that, and they do soak off paper pretty well. Another page finished. So the next 3 stamps, very similar. They're also eagle with a shield design, like we saw with that 1989 stamp. And it's done by the same artist. Again, it's Jay Hayden that did this. So Jay Hayden is a very prolific artist. He's done a lot of TV work, like over 30 years with like ABC and NBC. He designed a couple of the Olympics logos for the networks and a couple of Super Bowl logos. He's worked on some Star Wars movies, and he was the lead artist for the liquid metal Terminator, the T-1000, in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And this is Scott's 2595, 96, and 97. And the reason why there's 3 different ones, and these actually have slightly different designs if you look at them close enough, is because there was 3 printers that they hired to do this. The brown one was Banknote Corporation of America. The green 25-cent stamp, or 29 cents, was the Dittler Brothers Incorporated. And the last one with the red USA 29, that was the Stamp Venturers. And I think the post office was basically hiring 3 different people to see who could do the best job, and also to meet the demand for the stamp. They were really pushing the self-adhesive stamps. These are all ATM stamps, but they also had those strips of 18 for the first day covers. Based on the number of errors in the stamp catalog, I would say that the Banknote Corporation of America did the worst job, only in that there is a variety of this where the brown for the US 29 is omitted. And there's also there was issues with the die cutting on the brown stamps as well. So these are the brown 29s. So they all look like they're normally tagged to me. Place stamp here. This page is going to be 5 more. I'm just going to start with the first one. All right, next we're going to do the green stamps, the green 29. Yeah, I seem to have quite a few of these off paper. All right, green 29s. We're going to do a tagging check. I might go with this one. For any tours, here's a place stamp here that's going in the soaking pile. Here's a put stamp here. Another one. I think this one's definitely trimmed along the top, so it's going to go in the damaged pile. That one's definitely been scraped. Oh, Put stamp here. Post office will not deliver without postage. That's a little different than the last two. That's damaged. So that's it for that one. So we're just going to do the red stamps next. These are all on paper, so I'm going to definitely have to soak some of these off. Okay, here we go. Here's a wood stamp here. Post office will not deliver mail without postage. Order of something here. This might be the same. This next stamp, I only have one copy of. I actually bought this because I didn't have it. It's a 29-cent locomotive stamp. This is designed by Lou Nolan. He designed a whole bunch of stamps. We're going to be talking about that. There was two other sets of stamps with the same design on. There was a sheet stamp and a booklet stamp. This is the first Christmas ATM stamp was released. And I'm going to have to soak this off paper because it's on that lining there. Looks like it can kind of peel off a little bit. You can see they use the same design in a booklet and a sheet for the locomotive. It's probably going to be in there forever because got some of the adhesive on there still. I'm not going to worry about that. I thought I had more of these, but I guess not. Now these ones, also ATM stamps. These are designed by Michael R. Matherly. He's done a whole bunch of wildlife art. There's a bunch of other wildlife stamps that he's done with birds and whatnot. These particular ones soak off pretty easy, fortunately for collectors. I'm going to throw that locomotive stamp back in here because we're going to do a tagging check. I mean, this one doesn't really have any markings on it. It looks pretty good. Bring this light down. And here's something. I think it's another put stamp here with that warning slogan on there. So maybe we don't have that one. Alright, this page has 3 that are out of order, and then 4, or actually 5, that we're going to come to next episode. Those are all dated 1995. Now I'm doing the second one. The next stamp is the 29-cent red rose stamp. I actually have a whole bunch of these, so I think I'm gonna sort these off camera. The artist who did this, her name is, I'm probably gonna say this wrong, Goyo Fujikawa. She's a very famous children's artist. She's done a bunch of children's books, She's also done several other stamps, a couple different ones with cherry blossoms, and she's done other varieties of this rose. I think there's a yellow one, maybe a pink one. This one says extra postage required, which is fitting because there's 2 stamps there. Here's one that says place stamp here. They're similar design, probably the same one. There's another place stamp here. That might be a little smaller than the last design. All right, so I finished all those rose stamps. I forgot to check all of them for tagging, but we are going to check these guys. One thing I did find interesting, though, I was going through these, was I found a few stamps that were a little bit taller than the other ones. And the next stamp is Scott number 2491. This is the pine cone stamp. What's really interesting about this stamp is it's engraved, which is unusual for a self-adhesive stamp. So if you kind of rub your finger along the design, you can feel the ridges of the pine cone. It's pretty cool. One thing that makes this pine cone stamp different than the rest is it's the first one of these self-adhesive stamps to have a plate number coil. Even though I don't think these are truly in coils, I think they were still in those strips of 18 stamps. Some of them have a little B1 bottom right, or the bottom left I should say. Let me find a clean copy here. I don't know if I'll have one of these, but the B1 will be somewhere in this area right here in green letters. But they go for a few bucks, which is pretty good because, you know, you could get one of these for like 10 cents. This is what I'm going to go with for my album. Right here, I like that one. I'm going to check the tagging now. I didn't find any of the plate number coil singles, so that's a bummer. All right, so that's it for that stamp. And like I said, we're coming back here next week for these 5. So the next few, I don't actually have a lot of examples, so this won't go as long as the last couple did. There's a guy named Peter Good who designed 6 US stamps, and we're talking about all 6 of them today. But these are what I think are called Christmas Gaiety. So there's 4 major issues, and there's also non-self-adhesive versions of these as well. There's a booklet and there's a sheet. These are from a booklet, I believe. These could be the first non-ATM stamps. These are Scott 2799 through 2802. These are reindeer. These are all off paper except 2. So that's nice. These are ATM stamps. It was just the snowman. There is a plate number coil. It's always on the Santa Claus or those testing strips for the first aid covers. So if you see one of these taller self-adhesive and perforate snowman stamps, just check the bottom, make sure it doesn't have a number on there. So yeah, these all seem to be tagged. You can see here the Peter Good Christmas stamps, Christmas Gaiety. These are the sheet stamps and these are the booklet stamps. I'm going to be doing the self-adhesive versions here. Jack in the Box. Actually, the soldier's next. Well, it doesn't matter. Right, the next one's going to be 2598. This is Eagle stamp. This stamp is designed by Richard Sheaf. He is someone who was an art director at the post office for like 20 years plus, and he's either designed or been the art director for over 500 stamps. Might see his name quite a bit moving forward. He seems to started work at the post office about this time, at least where he's getting recognized. I believe there is, for the next 4 stamps, there are plate number coils. We're going to be looking for those. All right, so we went through this pile, found a couple place stamp here's. Anyway, we're going to check the tagging on these. So it looks pretty standard. And we didn't find any plate number coils. All right, next stamp is 2599. It's the Statue of Liberty stamp. This is designed by Tom Ingman, and you're going to be hearing that name a lot because he is associated with over 100 stamps. There's also a plate number single on here. There's a put stamp here. Oh, this has got something on there. Place stamp here. All right, so that's it for that. All right, so the next one we're going to be doing is called Love Sunrise, I think. So I got 5 on paper, 5 on paper, 5 off paper. We're going to test the tagging on these real quick. So I finally have same old green hue. Well, that's weird. See that, but this is bringing something out of the paper. I'm gonna soak these and check on that. Oh, I also got these 2 over here. This one says first class postage required, and this one says place stamp here. So we're gonna be checking those out. Another page done. All right, we're almost done. So the next one is going to be the Santa Claus issue. It's also done by Harry Zelenko. Oh, let's just do these 2 together. So I only have one of these. So this is the next stamp. This is was a ATM stamp. Yeah, that's the only one I got. So we're gonna you left. All right, this last one can be kind of weird. There's two different stamps here. I think the easiest way to tell is you can kind of see some shading or extra color or something going down the middle of the flag. Like this one doesn't seem to have it. There's 2 or 3 different ways to tell the difference between a 2886 and a 2887. They're virtually the same stamp, but they have slightly different paper. The 2887 has 5 colors instead of 3. And I think the paper's thicker and it's whiter in color. I'm pretty sure these 6 are all the same. Maybe that guy, I'm not sure. There's a good chance these 3 are a little different. But I'm gonna soak all of these off paper, although I heard the 2887s don't soak well. But let's go ahead and check these under the UV light, and then we'll be ready to soak and then put them in my album. Stamp here on it. Oh well, close enough. And that's the end.